끈질기게 지속적으로 투쟁해온 주체들의 그 힘이 결국에는 87년 6월에 폭발한 것이다.
Ever since May 16 coup, Korea was under the control of the military government, which had censorship, fraud law, corruption, and human rights infringement. Under these circumstances, when Chun Doo-hwan government again announced to have so-called the June election, the election dictated by the government, people began to demand for the constitutional change. Different activist groups protested against the government, but with different groups having different goals, the government could easily crush them by the use of force and propaganda. Korea remained in the tense mood. Despite its failure, the President Jeon did promise constitutional change regarding the election, and there was an active discussion going on in the Congress until April. However, in April, President Jeon announced a postponement of constitutional change after the Olympic, which would be held in 1988 after the next presidential election, and further insisted that he will choose a successor of his at the end of his term. He wanted to keep his influence even after. Jeon's announcement stirred up the demonstration and helped to guide the direction of the future democratic movement, the direct election and elimination of the tyranny. Soon after, one single event changed the history of Korea. During the memorial ceremony of Park Jong-cheol in Myeongdong Cathedral, Catholic Priests Association for Justice, or CPAJ, suddenly announced that death of student Park Jong-cheol has been manipulated. On January 14, the Seoul National University student Park Jong-cheol, who has been arrested during the protest, died of torture by police. Several newspapers announced his death, informing police officials' stance that he died in one hit. The people protested against the military government, who tortured him to death. The announcement of concealment stated that the death of Park Jong-cheol has been faked by police. It stated that the government was behind, controlling the whole scene. The government took action immediately by summarily firing all related figures, but it was too late. People were angered at the government brutality and censorship and started to actively participate in the protest. Furthermore, the various groups including local association, religious group, and political group gathered and unified to form a single association called National Coalition for Democratic Constitution. They decided to do a planned demonstration named Accusing Concealment of Murder through Torture and National Convention for Abolition and Protection of the Constitution on June 10. The day before the June 10, the student named Lee Han-yeol died. During the student riot in Yeonsei University, police brutally oppressed the protest by using tear gas and riot control agent. And Lee Han-yeol got hit by the tear gas. The photo of Lee Han-yeol, injured, spread through the mass media.
수류탄을 워낙 많이 쏴서 앞이 잘 보이지 않은 상황이었는데 딱 뛰어 들어가는데 왼쪽에 사람이 쓰러져 있는 느낌이 들어서 그 학생을 이제 전경들로부터 보호해야 되겠다.
The tragic death of Lee Han-yeol encouraged more people to participate in the protest in the next day.
시민들이 직접 시위에 나오고 있죠. 이게 불의한 정권이다라고 생각만 하고 있었던 것이 행동으로 옮길 수 있는 구체적인 그런 계기가 됐죠. 이한열이 체류탄에 맞아 쓰러진 저 사진 한 장.
Prior to the protest, the specific guideline was provided to the citizens. The guideline overall emphasized the non-violent protest by asking citizens to sing the national anthem, honking a car, turning off the light, and not watching the news. Even during the protest, the non-violence was especially emphasized. The demonstration included 22 different regions and over 80 universities. People altogether shouted, "Abolition and protection of the Constitution. Overthrow dictatorship, democratic win." The people of different age and class all participated. Even though people clashed with 58,000 police and violence did occur, the protest was overall peaceful. What the people demanded and the government wanted were obvious, as seen in the declaration from the June 10 demonstration. And as people shouted during the protest, they wanted proper constitutional change, which ultimately is direct election. They also wanted to get rid of the dictator and also wanted to achieve the freedom of speech. Also, they wanted protests to be non-violent, first because they did not want to justify the violence used by the government, and second, they wanted more citizens to participate. The successive events happened unexpectedly after the first protest. The days after, The protesters went inside the Myeongdong Catholic Cathedral and decided to stay and held a sit-in protest. It eventually helped to encourage more demonstration and other reasons. It also helped to trigger even more protests when the Jong government decided to let them go freely since it looked like a governmental defeat to other people. The government looked at the situation with great panic. The huge amount of police was put into riot, but they could not suppress them and it only proved the weakness of the public order. The government had used various methods such as limitlessly closed schools, limited office attendance, and taking citizens to police office, but it did not work properly. Even worse, the protests continued to grow one day after another. As the extension of sit-in protests in Myeongdong Cathedral, National Rally for Banishment of Tear Gas Grenades was taking place. As the June 10th protest was named after Park Jong-chul, June 18th protest reminds about Lee Han-yeol, who died after getting hit by the tear gas. While there were a series of protests, the government decided not to send out soldiers. In the end, Jeon started to find a way to secure himself afterwards.
그러니까 5.18을 한번 해본 상태에서 또다시 그것과 똑같은 방식의 어떻게 보면은 그것보다 훨씬 더 광범위하고 더 강력한 조치를 내려야 되는 상황에서 전두환은 주저할 수밖에 없었다.
He met with Kim Yong-sam, Lee Min-ho, Lee Man-seop, the three opposition party leaders, to negotiate. Yet the government still had hope to crush out the last protest. The 6-6 protest of the Great National March of Peace was the peak of the June democratic struggle. The protest had the largest number of people participated in almost 38 different cities. An enormous amount of skilled police still could not suppress the citizens. After the hope is gone, the government announced the 6-9 Declaration, which is about the freedom of media, direct presidential election system, and the dignity of man. A direct presidential election system was reintroduced in 15 years. This symbolizes the fruit of citizens' labor who fought for abolition of fraudulent election, an indirect election system which was implemented to prolong the militarism. Most of citizens' demands, such as direct election and abolition of tyranny, has been met. The June democracy movement brought to extended political freedom and made a fair election system. Until now, civilian presidents are elected and the election system for 1987 has maintained. However, there are also limitations and tragedy in terms of its accomplishment. People from different regions, class and age participated, but barriers of voices were ignored. Most notably the blue-collar laborers, who soon began the long history of struggle to achieve their goal. Even more ironically, even though the demands of direct election has been met, it ultimately leads to continuation of militarism under the influence of President Jeon. Do Tae-woo got elected with 33% of total votes, a very small portion, yet the highest compared to the others. This also marked how the June struggle only focused on the adaptation of process of taking the election but not the result. This led to the division of opponents, ultimately division of votes, leading to election of the original successor of Chun-doo-hwan. Shortly after 6-9 Declaration, Lee Han-yeol's funerals took place. It was the end of the June struggle. About 1.6 million citizens, greater compared to any other protest in June struggle, participated. It is important to remember, throughout the June democratic movement, it was the citizens who contributed most.
막 화장지도 갖다 주고 뭐 아이스크림도 사다 주고 막 박수도 쳐주고 막 이제 이러면서 조금만 우리가 노력하면 민주화된 사회가 되겠구나.
A June democratic movement sparked off from the deaths of two tragic deaths. There were always accumulated bitterness inside the oppressed citizens, and the two tragic deaths eventually worked as stimulant of June's struggle.
어떤 면에서 보면 이 두 죽음은 필연적이었을 거예요. 꼭 이 두 사람이 아니었더라도 다른 방식의 어떤 죽음을 갖고 왔겠죠. 그 정도로 폭력적이었던 그 본질이었으니까. 근데 이게 표출 어느 시점에선가, 그러니까 1987년의 벽두와 그리고 6월 항쟁의 피크의 지점에서 드러났고, 그게 사람들을 집결하는, 결집하는 큰 계기가 될 수 있었던 거죠.
Even though some of the voices were not met, the June democratic movement worked as a future guide for protest. Even though militarism continued, it was meaningful that still it was citizens who select the leader, not military dictator. Last year, 2017, citizens once again legally drew away the President Park Geun-hye. From 1987, we learned how to handle and how to demand what we want. It is citizens who make demand, and it is citizens who achieve it.